Do you have a masculine shield? Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. Today I want to talk about women's body image and beauty standards and the masculine shield. If you're new to my content, I'm going to give you a brief summary about masculine and feminine energies. Masculine and feminine energies are energies that live in all of us. We all contain both energies, but we all have a core energy that's the one we're most ourselves in. That energy often links up with our gender. It doesn't have to, but it very often does. But the majority of women are feminine at their core, and the majority of men are masculine at their core. That means that most women are going to be at their best selves when they're in their feminine energy, and most men are going to be their best selves when they're in their masculine energy. I actually have a video I did recently kind of breaking down these basics much deeper, so I highly suggest you check out that video if you want to get into the masculine feminine dynamics a little bit more. So one of the purposes of masculine energy is to create safety, is to be the protectors. That's why we think of like men as being the protectors. However, it is the masculine energy in all of us that is our protectors, that keeps us safe, and that goes for men or women. So when a woman feels unsafe in the world for whatever reason, it's totally normal and healthy for her to enact her own masculine energy to protect herself. That's a normal and actually very useful, functional thing for her to do. However, if a woman begins to always feel unsafe or not be able to feel a sense of safety, or has experienced trauma or pain or wounding around men specifically, or very unhealthy masculine energy, I would say wounded masculine energy, very toxic masculinity or something. This often comes in cases of women that have, sexual trauma from their past, or women who have been in abusive situations, oftentimes in childhood. Oftentimes when a woman is unable to feel safety in the world, particularly around men, she will develop a masculine shield. And that is basically when she enacts her own masculine energy so much that she's using it as a wall to keep other people, particularly men, out of her space. Now, sometimes having that wall up is a natural reaction to her simply feeling unsafe in a situation. And that's normal and it's healthy. However, if as a woman you feel like you have to put that wall up all the time, and you start doing things that are not really healthy for yourself in order to keep that wall up or keep that barrier up, eventually that's gonna wear down on you, and it's gonna put your health and just your livelihood at risk. So when I talk about the masculine shield and the ways that the masculine shield is going to show up in women, bear in mind I'm not saying that it is always bad for a woman to enact her masculine energy to protect herself. However, what I'm talking about are situations where women feel like they have to live with a masculine shield up because they just feel like the world, particularly men in general, are unsafe and they need to protect themselves. I also want to point out, I'm not shaming women for doing this. I understand why women do this. I've done this plenty of times. So this is a normal thing that's going on in society, and I understand why women are doing it. I'm not shaming women for enacting their masculine shield or even living with their masculine shield. I just think that it's good to be aware of these things, because I think oftentimes we do these things unconsciously, and it can end up keeping us from things that maybe we really want in life, or it can end up harming us in different ways in our lives that we don't even really realize if we just go through the motions and we're unaware. So I'm a big believer that awareness is key. So none of what I'm saying in this video is meant to shame or judge. This is literally just intended for you to be aware of these things so you can work towards healing. So the most common and I think most basic way that a masculine shield shows up is you just end up very closed off, very guarded. Oftentimes you end up very hunched over, you end up very closed off. You oftentimes stand very close, like you're constantly like covering your heart. You find yourself like just in movements that are very closed off, which in certain cases might be a good idea. However, it blocks off people from interacting with you. So if you're finding that like you never develop relationships with people, or you can't actually ever have, because we're meant for community as humans, if you find yourself completely cutting yourself off from having any kind of community, it doesn't mean that you have to like always be open, but what that typically means is you have to learn to discern which situations are safe and which situations are unsafe. So if you feel like every situation you're in is unsafe, you either need to find a new environment where you do feel safe, or start to learn when it's safe to let your guard down. That can take time, and that's a whole other topic that's more in depth than I think this video is going to get into. But that's like the most common way, and I think most women in general probably are in that situation to some level. If you are thinking like, oh yeah, that's me, I really wish I could connect with people, whether it be romantically or whether it be, you know, friendships or community or anything, but I'm constantly shut down, then it's just an invitation to think about that. To think about, like, actually when you find yourself tensing up, when you find yourself closing down, ask yourself, am I actually safe right now? Is this a safe situation or is it not? If it's not a safe situation, then you know what? Maybe being shut down is the appropriate thing, and maybe you need to figure out how to remove yourself from that situation. But if you actually ask yourself that and you're like, you know, I'm actually not unsafe right now, think about that and then just see if you can let your body relax a little bit. I mean, that's just, I'm literally just scratching the surface of this because these things usually go much deeper than just a surface situation. That's just a way to start working on things. But that is the most common way that the masculine shield shows up. There are a lot more dramatic ways that the masculine shield shows up. I'm going to touch on two main ones, and they have a lot to do with body image, which is something I'm very passionate about talking about. And it's also something that is very prevalent right now in the media. So the first way I want to talk about is something that's very personal for me because it's something I've experienced, and I've known a lot of women that have also experienced this, and I actually had a request to talk about this in a video from a viewer who was saying that they were dealing with this and hadn't really heard anybody else talk about this. So I want to get into the masculine shield and weight gain. Now, women that have masculine shields up do not always experience this, but this is a very common experience for women. Many women will put on weight as a protective shield when they feel unsafe in the world, particularly around men. Now, before I get into this topic too deeply, because I've very much experienced this over the years, I have a video talking about the masculine feminine myths in fitness. I dive into like my background when it comes to diet and fitness. I have a lot of experience in the diet and fitness realm over the course of my life. And when I talk about the masculine shield and weight gain, I'm not using this as an excuse, because I know that there's people that are going to be like, you're just making an excuse for why you gained weight. I don't believe that trying to find the root of your issue is the same thing as making an excuse. I think oftentimes getting to the root of maybe like why you have a certain behavior, to some people, they can think of it as an excuse, but I think oftentimes you don't know really where to heal or where your healing needs to be, and you oftentimes end up repeating the same pattern over and over and over again if you don't get to the root of your issue. I think most of us in the world that have ever struggled with their weight at all know the experience of yo-yo dieting. Why do we yo-yo diet? Well, we pretty much yo-yo diet because we'll diet and we'll lose weight, but we haven't dealt with the core issue of why we gained weight in the first place. So we just end up going right back into the old pattern. I talked about my weight struggles in the past in other videos, so I don't want to spend the whole video talking about that. But one of the biggest lessons that I had to learn in life, and I had to learn this several times over, is I was so convinced that if I could just get to a certain weight or get my body to a certain size, that all my problems would be solved. And I would get to that size and get to that weight, and I would still have all my problems. And in fact, I oftentimes had even more problems. And that's not to discourage anybody from actually like working out and getting healthy or anything. However, it would oftentimes lead me to just like throw my hands up in the air and be like, well, to hell with it, why am I doing this? Now, I realize that being healthy should be a reward in itself, of course, but let's face it, we're human. And I would say the first few times I had to learn this lesson, I was very young. So, you know, these were lessons that I had to go through. When you lose the weight and you're like, okay, I don't have everything that I wanted. This is not giving me what I need. And also you're dealing with the same problems you were dealing with when you were overweight, but you're also like really sweaty all the time because you're working out all the time, and you're hungry and you're frustrated. You don't have eating as a coping mechanism anymore. If you don't have the tools to figure it out, oftentimes it just sends you on a yo-yo spiral, right? So as someone who has, you know, in the years that I've been alive, I've been dieting since I was 8 years old. I was a lifetime member of Weight Watchers at age 11. My weight has gone up and down. I have been like every dress size on the spectrum. I have dated as a plus size woman. I've dated as a, you know, a very fit woman. I've you know, existed in the world in all different body sizes at this point in my life. I can tell you a few different phenomenons when it comes to interactions with men at different body sizes. I do hear women talk about their experiences of being overweight and invisible. I personally have never experienced that. I've never really been like invisible to guys. I've always gotten male attention. It hasn't always been positive attention, but I've always managed to get male attention. I will say I do get more male attention at a smaller body size than a larger body size. I truly believe that this is actually more to do with the fact that I personally feel more confident in a smaller body size than in a larger body size. Some of that is probably programming. Will fully admit it's my own issue. It's my own mental thing that like smaller is better. I came of age in the 90s with the you know, heroin chic supermodel trend. So like that's embedded in my brain for sure. However, there's also a factor that I gain weight in very odd places for a woman. So where I carry my weight, especially as I get bigger, makes buying clothes very difficult for me. When I'm in a smaller body size, I can kind of make it work a little bit more. When I'm in a larger body size, finding clothes that fit properly is incredibly difficult. Like even with, you know, I mean, there's more options for larger size women than there ever has been before, but I personally just don't find that most plus size items really fit my body shape very well, even when I am in a plus size body. To a certain extent, I really do believe that a lot of the male attention that I get at a smaller body size is because I tend to have more options of clothing that make me feel good, so I walk around and I have much more confidence in my body than I do in a bigger body size. It has less to do specifically with the body size. That's not to say that we don't live in a society where smaller body sizes are just universally seen as better, but I do think that my own like inner confidence in how I carry myself has a lot more to do with it than my specific body size. However, one thing that I have learned in my life is that while in a smaller body size, I do get more male attention, I don't get better male attention. There's just more men that pay attention to me, and oftentimes it gets overwhelming and it can feel very unsafe to get a lot of male attention, especially when it's very lecherous attention. What I discovered that I was doing, which it took me a long time to realize this, was when I started to feel like I was getting too much lecherous attention from men, I would unconsciously start eating a lot more and eating much less healthy. I would get into binge eating habits, which is a whole thing that I've been dealing with my whole life, so that's a whole other story. But the binge eating would get worse, and I would then start putting on more and more weight, and that would create this sort of like protective shield, because I would get less attention from men when I was heavier. Not that I would get no attention, but I would get less attention, and I wouldn't be quite as sexualized as I was when I was in a smaller body size. So I would start putting on this energetic weight that was protecting me from the outside world. Ironically, you still get shamed. I still get a ton of body shame at a bigger size, but I don't get sexualized as much. I had gone through this kind of like up and down weight phenomenon many times in my life, and I've very much often been able to correlate it between situations where I felt very unsafe around men, and then I would start gaining a lot of energetic weight. Again, not to say that I wasn't, I mean, I've always been very active, which is one of the things, like I get really angry. I shouldn't. I don't let too many things trigger me online anymore, but like when people start telling me like go to the gym, I'm like, I have always been an active person at every weight range, so I always work out. So when I've been at heavier weights, I've still worked out. I've still been active. For me, my issue has always been food and my relationship with food. And I'm not saying that my weight gain did not have anything to do with the fact that I was eating a lot more calories. However, the reason I was eating a lot more calories was because I subconsciously wanted to put on weight, even though I didn't actually want to put on weight. Like I didn't want to get bigger, but a part of me was deliberately trying to put on the weight because it felt unsafe, particularly with men in the world, for me to not have a protective barrier around me. So like, yes, was I actually doing the things that would make me put on weight? Yes, I was. I'm not denying that. However, the motivation behind that which I wasn't really conscious of, it was an unconscious action, I was doing that because I felt unsafe in the world around men, because at a thinner body size, I was so overly sexualized, and that felt very unsafe for me. That was something that I realized in hindsight was a pattern for me over the years, like just in life. But I think it became incredibly evident for me in more recent years with social media. So for any of you who are relatively new to following me, I would say maybe in the last 10 years or so, let's just say, I had gone on this like massive fitness journey. I was like so into fitness. I was working out. I was like, you know, into bodybuilding and weightlifting and everything. And I was like really getting active. And I was just, I had this like obsession with being like fit by 40. I didn't turn 40 10 years ago, not that long ago. But at about like 37, 38 years old, I had kind of gotten myself into like the fittest I had ever been in my life. And I decided that I really wanted to learn to love my body, accept my body, because I had always felt self-conscious. Like I always felt like that like inner fat girl that I was as a kid. Like I wasn't really comfortable in my body. I for sure wasn't comfortable in my sexuality. So I ended up at 37, 38 years old, I basically turned myself into an Instagram lingerie model. It kind of happened overnight, and I was creating content because I wanted other women to learn to feel good in their body, because like even at my fittest, I was not a model body size. I was not an Instagram model look. Like I wasn't like an Instagram baddie. Like that was not my body. I had a very like not on trend body type, but I wanted to kind of share my experience with pushing my comfort levels of like what I was expressing and how I was expressing my body, because I wanted to inspire other women to do the same. I was actually amazed at how many women that like looked nothing like me, but also didn't feel like they fit the beauty standard, were actually, you know, writing me, telling me about how much I had helped them with their confidence and things like that. And I'm somewhat conflicted about that timeline of my experience, because as much as I am grateful for that experience, I also, while I wasn't doing anything that was like, you know, medications or taking any kind of drugs or anything, I didn't have any plastic surgeries or anything like that. What I was doing as far as diet and fitness was quite extreme, and in hindsight was probably not the healthiest thing for me long term. So I do hold some conflict in that of like, hey, that's when I felt the most beautiful in my body, but I wasn't really treating my body that well, and I had to kind of live with that. Another thing that happened was, and you know, this was inevitable, a lot of men were very, let's just say inappropriate. And while I accepted the fact that I couldn't control whether or not men were sexually attracted to the content that I was making, even though I was making the content to encourage women to be more confident in their own bodies, I accepted the fact that some men were just gonna find it sexual and some men were gonna sexualize it, and I just had to live with that. Unfortunately, that really took a toll on me. And I think part of it was because, you know, I was also going through a divorce in this process, which I don't regret, and I believe that that was something I had to go through. But I think as a single woman, being so overly sexualized by men and never feeling like I was truly in a relationship with a guy, or I had ever been in a relationship with a guy that really wanted me for me. Because I think even, like, I don't even think my ex-husband actually liked me as a person. I think he liked the image. And I think most of my exes liked the image, but they didn't like me as a person, which is why I kind of call bullshit a little bit on pretty privilege. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. However, and I have other videos talking about pretty privilege, it can be a double-edged sword, because yeah, if you do have pretty privilege, there are certain aspects to interacting with men where you're gonna have a lot of benefits, but most men are never gonna like you as a person. Like, they're never gonna look past the image, and if you as a woman have superficial beauty, you're often going to attract men who maybe they have superficial money or superficial power or status or something, but they're probably never gonna show up with anything of more substance, and they're probably also never going to see you beneath the surface, because it's very easy for men to objectify women, especially attractive women. So while yes, an attractive woman may get certain benefits from men, attractive women are also going to be much more likely to be objectified by men. So it is a double-edged sword. You can decide how you feel about that, but that is just the reality of things. And as I was, you know, on this journey, and as I had this lingerie account and things like that, I started to feel so bitter. And I already had a lot of bitterness around men in general, but I just started to feel very unsafe about the whole thing, and it really started to weigh down on me. And I'm not saying that that's the only reason why I gained weight. I've talked a little bit about my weight gain in other videos, and you know, how I was doing some really dramatic things to get myself that thin, and I felt like my metabolism and my health and everything was really catching up with me, and I really needed to reset. I needed to heal my relationship with food. Like, there's a lot of reasons why I gained weight. I gained weight intentionally. It was not I just flew off the handle and was just sort of like, I'm just gonna put on weight. It was a very intentional weight gain. It was meant to heal my relationship with food. I've talked about this in other videos, that I don't really want to talk too much about like how I did things, because I know for me, I've gotten so caught up in other creators' content and tried to emulate exactly what they were doing, and I don't want other women to do the same thing, because I made the choices that I made for my body and for me, and I never want anyone else to emulate me, because you're not me and I'm not you, and just because I did something some way doesn't mean it was the right way for me to do it, and it sure doesn't mean it's the right way for you to do it. So that's why I kind of don't really talk about the details of how I gained weight, why I gained weight, all this kind of stuff. It was a part of my life that I had to go through, and I stopped posting the lingerie content primarily because I didn't want my social media to be focused on my body so much, because I knew my body was going to be going through changes, and I really didn't want to put myself up for scrutiny when it came to my body shifting and changing. So I just started creating content where I sit here and I talk to you, and I'm pretty much just talking to you from like the, you know, shoulders up. I didn't realize how much hatred I was going to get from men. From the shoulders up, guys are like guessing that I'm like 600 pounds or something, when it's just like, dude, you don't even know what I look like full body, right? I do know in my face was getting a lot fuller. I obviously was gaining weight. I realized that. I didn't realize how much hate I was going to get from men just for gaining weight in my face, but apparently a lot of men online really got upset about it. So that certainly felt unsafe, I will say. But now I'm kind of on the, like, I kind of reached my peak weight, and I'm kind of like shifting back, and I don't intend to really be as skinny as I was before. Maybe I will, maybe I won't, I have no idea. But I am like shifting a little bit now, so I have lost a little bit of weight recently, and it's amazing how just in the little bit of weight loss that I've had, and I haven't really talked about it at all, I haven't mentioned it, it's just I do notice in videos when I'm editing, my face is a little bit slimmer, and I do notice like clothing is fitting a little bit differently and stuff. I'm all of a sudden starting to get a lot of like sexual comments from men again, and like random guys hitting on me and sexualizing me online, when it's like, well, it was just a day ago. Or actually, like, even like now, like some of my videos from a couple months ago where I was a lot fuller in the face, I'm getting guys that are just like saying the most awful things about me, being like, you know, a beached whale or whatever. Whereas now that I've lost a little bit of weight, and again, like in my face, right, just talking shoulders up here, I'm getting guys who are like sexualizing me and things like that, and we're talking just like a few pounds here, right? And I gotta be honest with you, I started to notice it again. Like, I started to feel like, like it became this like, ooh, maybe this isn't safe for me to be losing weight again. Like, maybe this isn't safe for me to be in my body this way, right? A lot of this stuff comes from just not feeling safe in your body, because you feel like if you are in a body that is a certain size or a certain shape, you're going to be overly sexualized. Now, I have a naturally large chest. You can look at pictures of me on Instagram from several years back where, you know, my lingerie content, that was the thinnest I've probably ever been in my life. These still huge. Are they smaller than they are now? Yeah, because, you know, my body does get smaller, but like, they're still huge. That's just nature. It's how I am. It's how I look. So obviously, and I'm sure that women in that situation are also women who maybe have, you know, just naturally large hips or naturally large butt, probably get sexualized in the same way. So like, no matter how small you get, you still have like the hips and butt that, you know, is very on trend right now, and you may still get sexualized. It doesn't take much for men to sexualize women, and that has a lot to do with porn culture. I have a video talking about porn culture and diving into that, so I'm not gonna dive into that here. It kind of amazes me how many guys will shame women for gaining weight or for the female obesity epidemic in this country, as if the male obesity epidemic in this country isn't the same. But they'll shame women for being overweight. They'll say all American women are overweight, all American women are obese. Yet these guys all have porn addictions and they all objectify women. And it's like, you realize that if you are constantly objectifying women and you're learning to do that through porn culture, women are going to feel unsafe and probably energetically gain weight. And that is going to lead to an obesity epidemic because women are going to be putting on a lot of energetic weight as a shield to protect themselves from unsafe men. So it's ironic that unsafe men will shame women for all being like all American women are obese and let's go to another country because, you know, women aren't obese there. And yet it's like, okay, but a lot of women are gaining that weight and are energetically trying to put the shield up to protect themselves from men like you. Again, I could go into the hypocrisy of like the manosphere and the passport bros, and I have a video talking about passport bros and their hypocrisy if you want to learn more about my perspectives on that. But yeah, like it's just, it always boggles my mind that men will shame women for putting on weight when it's like, well, most women are putting on weight nowadays. I'm not saying that women aren't actually like eating more food or eating a very unhealthy diet or more people in general in America, but we're talking about the obesity epidemic in women. But there are more women who could use more activity in their life. We do as a culture have like an unhealthy level of sedentary behavior and things like that. Like, I'm not saying that those things aren't like practical reasons why people are gaining weight. However, if you don't get to the root of like why are you eating too much? Why are you eating so much junk food? Why are you so inactive? Like what is the thing that's leading you to that? You can't out discipline yourself from your trauma. Like, if you have like a deep reason why you feel like being your ideal weight or your ideal size, and I'm not talking about like, you know, magazine ideal, I'm not talking about anything, I'm talking about your, like the size, whatever size that you need to be at your best self, at your healthiest. I talk about this more in my masculine feminine myths and fitness, about how I think fitness should be much more focused on health and less on aesthetics. That's a whole other conversation. What I'm getting at is it's really important that you get to the root of like why you're doing what you're doing, because you can just discipline yourself all day and say like, I need to be more disciplined, I need to not eat like this, I need to exercise more, I need to do these kind of things. But if you can get to the root of like, why do you not find moving your body to be a good positive thing? Why are you constantly gravitating towards like unhealthy foods or eating junk food or overeating or binge eating or something? If you don't get to the root of why you're doing that and you just try to like out discipline yourself into doing things that you think you should be doing, I mean, you might actually do that behavior for a while, but that stuff that you're not dealing with is going to catch up with you, and that's where you start getting into the yo-yo dieting, or you end up getting into doing some really dangerous and unhealthy things with your body. And that's what I want to get into the next type of masculine shield that I want to talk about, and that is the, I'll call it kind of the perfectionist masculine shield aspect. This is the almost the opposite of the weight gain. This is the woman that becomes obsessed with perfection. Masculine energy tends to be drawn to things being more structured and disciplined, which isn't always a bad thing. I mean, that can be a very good thing for anybody to have, male or female, is to have like a masculine structure and an ability to have masculine discipline. Those things are good for men or women. When it becomes an obsession and the obsession for perfection, that's usually when you find wounded masculine energy. That's not a healthy state to be in, to be obsessed with perfection. And oftentimes that obsession with perfection in women is a masculine shield to, like, they feel like if they can just be perfect, then they'll be safe, or their life will be what it's supposed to be. There's so many ways that this can manifest into your life. It's the basis for most eating disorders. If you think about it, most eating disorders tend to be an obsession with perfection. Like, if I just don't eat, then I will get the perfect body, or even like unbelievably obsessed with getting the perfect macros in a day, or the obsession with any kind of perfection in the gym. Bodybuilding can very much lead into this. I'm not discouraging people from doing bodybuilding. That's what you want to do and that's what you're into. Great. Like, I'm a firm believer, and I talk about this more in my fitness myths video. I'm a firm believer that the proper exercise for you is whichever one you're willing to do. Like, if you enjoy it, go for it. However, you have to be careful if you are in a perfectionist mentality, when you are getting into fitness, that you don't become obsessed with perfecting your body in a certain way. This can also lead to yo-yo dieting for sure, because oftentimes you are striving for a perfection that is not attainable because it's either not real, it's either not something that your body can achieve with your genetics, no matter how fit or healthy you get, or it's not something that anybody can achieve without plastic surgery, which is something that I'm gonna get into. I actually just saw, I don't know who this creator was because it's not someone I follow, but it was a video that came up of a woman who's in the fitness industry and was admitting that she had always followed this fitness creator and had been trying so hard to emulate this fitness creator's look and was doing all her workouts and everything, and then ended up realizing that this fitness creator had her look because of plastic surgery. And this was a woman in the fitness industry that was fooled by this woman, this fitness creator, who was misrepresenting herself, because you can't get the body that she has through fitness, because it's not possible to do that. You have to have surgery in order to get that body. It was interesting because she was having this conversation with a guy who's also a personal trainer, and he was just like, yeah, it's like you're setting up women to achieve this perfection. And I was like, it's interesting how we call this surgically enhanced body perfection when it's not even real. Like, it's just a fake thing. It's not even actually like what a human body is gonna do naturally, but we call it perfect. It's like, talk about setting a completely unattainable goal, because it's not perfect, because it's not something that people's bodies are meant to look like. It's not something that we can achieve through, you know, any kind of natural means, but yet we somehow think of that as being the definition of perfect. It's such an unhealthy mentality. I'm gonna get into plastic surgery too, but like, this is the basis of a lot of eating disorders, obsessive eating. It can also lead to binge eating. I think binge eating could fall into either category. It could be the gaining weight with a masculine shield, or also like binging because you've become so obsessed with perfection and then your body just kind of can't handle it anymore and it breaks down and just starts binging on things that your body needs. Oftentimes binging can be because your body is, I mean, sometimes it's emotional, sometimes it's because your body is deprived of certain nutrients, like you're not giving your body enough nutrients that it needs in your regular diet because it's so strict, and so your body literally will actually like force you to overeat because it's like, okay, I'm gonna get some kind of nutrients in my body somehow. Sometimes binging can be a survival thing. Now, I'm not gonna get into in this video the difference between the two. I'm not encouraging binge eating by any means. It's something I've battled, and I've done it emotionally, and I've also done it because my body like needed the nutrients, and like I am more aware of the differences. I'm not gonna dive into that in this video. But again, this striving for perfection becomes this obsession because you think like, if I can just reach this perfection, everything will be okay. And it oftentimes becomes a shield. It becomes a wall around you to protect you from the outside world, right? I would also say in this perfection, I don't like associating this with perfection, but it also leads people very much into plastic surgeries. And some of it comes from a place of, okay, well, if I just change this one thing, like if I hate my nose, I'll change my nose and I'll just get this done and then I'll be perfect. But then they realize when they change their nose, like, well, now my lips don't look right, so now I'm gonna do my lips. And like, plastic surgery can so easily become an addiction and an obsession, which usually is an obsession with perfectionism, which is very much masculine energy and can very much be like, let me protect myself from the outside world. I would also go to say that in the same way that oftentimes for women, gaining weight is a way of putting up a masculine shield to protect themselves from men who feel unsafe. On the flip side, completely reconstructing your body and making yourself essentially into a plastic doll sex object, like a lot of women unfortunately are doing nowadays, Kylie Jenner, like that can also be a protective shield. I go into this a little bit in my sort of like natural versus fake beauty video, but if as a woman, if you now have, you know, implants and you have, you know, a BBL and you've basically like made yourself into an object, it's kind of like you objectify yourself before a man objectifies you. It's not logical, mind you. This is something that usually happens because of trauma or, you know, fear or anything like that. It's not logical because it's not going to get you not objectified. But I think oftentimes women convince themselves that it's liberating because it's like, well, if I objectify myself, then I'm in control of being objectified. I'm not just waiting for a man to objectify me or letting a man treat me like an object. I'm going to make myself into an object. And it's a way that I think women give themselves a false sense of power because it's not really empowering at the end of the day, because you're still going to be objectified and you're probably not going to find a good, healthy relationship with a man who loves you and doesn't objectify you, because you're literally inviting in men who are going to objectify you. So it's not really empowering, but it does make a certain amount of sense why some women could feel like a false sense of empowerment by turning themselves into an object. Because then I've always observed this, that like as a woman who's grown up and always had a very large chest, that when I've met women who get breast implants, they're very different about how they have a connection to their chest than I do, because mine are real and I've always had them and they're a part of me. Like they're not like an artificial appendage that is like attached to me, they're me. So I'm much more conscious of like who I share them with. I've met so many girls who get implants and they're, I mean, not necessarily for everybody, but like they'll be like, do you want to feel them? And it's like, I would never do that because these are mine. Like this is part of my body. And I feel like when women get these, like say implants, they're so disconnected from them because they don't think of them as part of their body, because they're literally an extra appendage that they've added onto their body. Like they've literally made themselves into an object. And oftentimes that can be a protective shield, because if you don't feel like, you know, your breasts, your butt, whatever are you feel like they're like something that has been added onto you, like they're an artificial thing that has been added onto you. When people decide to objectify them or take advantage of them, or people sexualize you, again, this isn't logical, but I think women can convince themselves like, oh, well, they're not really sexualizing me because this isn't really me. It's a shield in a way where a woman is still letting a man sexualize her, but she can kind of disconnect herself from the sexualization because she can kind of convince herself, well, it's not really her, right? Like this, and again, I'm not saying this is logical, but I'm saying I do think that this is something that a lot of women experience, where you get women that will get this massive amount of plastic surgery, because the more surgery they get, the less they have to be connected to themselves. I do want to go on a little bit of a rant about Kylie Jenner, because I have a video on TikTok that's quite popular about Kylie Jenner and how damaging I think that her look and her image has been to young girls. I think she's perpetuated a lot of this trend of women objectifying themselves and things like that. She's not the original source of this behavior. I think this behavior goes way further back than her, but I think she's normalized it for a whole new generation. And I want to touch on that just a little bit. I've talked about her in numerous other videos and stuff, and generally speaking, I try to give a lot of nuance. If you've noticed in this video previously, I try to give a lot of nuance, and I do tend to have a lot of empathy for people, even people who I massively disagree with. I really, really struggle to feel any kind of empathy for Kylie Jenner, because again, I don't think she's the original source of this, but I do think that she perpetuated this mentality of women feeling like they could just turn themselves into objects for a whole new generation, and I think much younger than we've ever seen this happen before. I have not watched the newest season of the Kardashians on Hulu, but I did see the clip of Kylie crying about people being so mean to her about her look and everything. I tried sitting through watching the whole thing, and I was getting so angry by it that I was like, I was so triggered. And I don't like to create content when I'm really triggered about things, so I'm gonna try to keep my composure with this, but like it made me really angry. Kendall said something in the conversation. This was a conversation between Kylie and Kendall said something in the conversation about that people don't see them as being human. And so people will say things to them that they would never say to other women, or if someone said it to other women, people would jump in and defend them. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. Like, the things that people say online now are just horrific across the board. So the Kardashians are not being like unnecessarily targeted. However, I don't think Kendall's quite as extreme an example, but Kylie for sure. Nothing on Kylie is real, like head to toe. It's not her face, it's not her nose, it's not her lips, not her boobs, it's not her waist, it's not her hips, it's not her butt. None of it's real. It's all fake. And I go into this more in my like fake versus natural videos, but nothing on her is real. So to then start crying and being like, why aren't people treating me like a human being? You're lab created. You're not real. Like, you're literally not real. You made yourself into a fake person. Everything on you is fake. You made yourself into a plastic doll, and now you're crying because you want people to treat you like you're human. Now, yes, I know there's a lot of people who are gonna say she was underage when she went through this. She made this decision. She started having this surgery when she was underage. Yes, that's true. I think her parents should absolutely be held responsible. I think the doctors that did any of these procedures should be held responsible. The problem is Kylie is literally the face. She's the fake face, but she's the face of what she's done. So if she wants to start calling out names, that's fine. But until she calls out names, like, I would easily make the argument that Kylie, who got involved with Tyga when she was underage, I would easily argue that probably a lot of the self-consciousness that she felt at that age was because she was comparing herself to Blac Chyna, who was Tyga's ex, and felt like she needed to, I mean, whether she just felt that way because she knew he had dated her, or whether he actually made her feel like she needed to look like Blac Chyna or something like that, I don't really know. But at the end of the day, it's understandable why a 16-year-old girl would feel the need to surgically alter herself if she was dating a guy whose ex was essentially like a porn star who was sexually altering herself. One of the reasons why 16-year-old girls aren't supposed to date grown men. I feel like if she actually came out and said like that he made her feel bad about this stuff, I mean, I think he should be in jail for messing with an underage girl. But like, at the end of the day, if she had said, I felt like I had to keep up with my boyfriend's ex because she looked like X, Y, and Z, and that's why I made that decision, I feel like people would have been a lot more understanding. But she doesn't do that. She puts the blame on the public. And it's interesting because I heard a few people touch on this online, and this was kind of like an aha moment for me, because Kylie blames the public and the scrutiny she's gotten at such a young age on the public so much. And as someone, like, I'm the same age as Kim Kardashian. I remember when the Kardashians came about and they came up, and Kendall and Kylie were like kids on the show. But like, they weren't a main part of the show. Like, they were just kind of like background on the show. As the show got on in later years, they were bigger parts of the show, but like, they weren't a central part of the show. And social media was not as big a thing back then at that point in time when she was a kid. Now, that doesn't mean that she wasn't getting scrutiny, doesn't mean she wasn't getting insults, because, you know, everybody is, and the internet's a messy place, and when you're in the public eye, you get scrutiny, it happens. And now, is Kylie as a young girl going to be more like alert to any criticism of herself? Like, as an adolescent girl, she's going to be paying more attention to any little insult that happens towards her. Of course, that's normal in an adolescent girl. But as someone who remembers the buzz around that show at that time period, I don't ever remember anybody criticizing Kendall or Kylie at all when they were that age. People didn't start talking about Kendall and Kylie's looks like on a grand scale until Kendall became a model and Kylie started having like all of this massive work done to make herself look different. I'm not saying she never got an insult. I'm not saying that she never had anybody scrutinize her, but like, it was not a mass public judgment of her looks. And like, compared to what Khloe has endured, I mean, the things that people have said about Khloe, like her getting all of this work done and reconstructing her face and body and everything, like, makes perfect sense. I don't think she should have done it. I think she should have embraced her natural beauty. I don't think she needed to do these things, but I totally understand how she got there, because Khloe has been criticized so much. Like, the way people talked about Khloe over the years is like unbelievable. Like, the fact that people have said like she's not attractive enough to be like related to her sisters, like that she was like, you know, actually a man and they were putting her in drag. Like, the fact that people have been saying such horrible things about Khloe over the years, which I think she pretends she's not insecure about it, but I think she absolutely is. And her getting all this work done, well, I don't think she needed to, and I don't think she should. I totally get why she did that. But with Kylie, there was not a mass public attack of her appearance, like, until she started doing all these things to her looks to make herself look like a different person. Now, I know she said like she had a boyfriend that told her she had thin lips, so she was self-conscious about her lips all the time. But like, what adolescent girl hasn't had somebody make fun of a part of her body before? And like, most of us don't carry one insult about a part of our body with us their whole life and decide to reconstruct our entire body because one ex-boyfriend said we had thin lips. As someone who was massively bullied growing up for being overweight, I mean, since I was a child, I've had adults bully me for being overweight. Like, I mean, the bullying I got, granted, in my day, it was before social media and I was not a public figure, but like, Mike, I thought I was hideous. I thought I was ugly. I was called ugly every day of my life. I I cried myself to sleep. I used to try to stay home from school because I thought other kids would have a better day in school if they didn't have to look at me. Like, as someone who felt so ugly and so unattractive growing up and was constantly told she was not pretty enough and not good enough, I don't find that enough of an excuse to then completely reconstruct your whole body. I've never had plastic surgery, ever. No fillers, no injections, no Botox, no anything, no nose job, no anything, and I'm 44 years old. I don't find that, oh, somebody made fun of me one time when I was a teenager, so I decided to completely reconstruct my whole body. I don't find that to be an excuse. And I also find that message to be even more dangerous because it sends the message to a younger generation of girls that, like, that's how you deal with someone insulting you. I actually argue, and I'm way harder on Kylie, I know, than I am on a lot of other celebrities. I talked about that in my Megan Fox video. I think Kylie's worse than Kim for several reasons. For one, Kim's the same age as me. Kim's audience has always been like around her age and legal adults. Kylie's audience started at such a young age and her influence started at girls on such a young age. She started lying to them. She started, you know, pretending that, you know, you could get her results with the products that she was selling or the products she was endorsing. When it came to, you know, lip kits, when it came to push-up bras, she wasn't fully disclosing what she was actually doing while trying to actively sell someone a product. Now look, if you change your body and you want to talk about it, and it's your body, that's fine. If you are trying to sell someone a product and tell them that they can get the results that you got with your product or your service or anything, and that's not how you got your results, you got it through other means, that's false advertising. That should be crime. That should be a crime. It should be illegal to do that. Her not disclosing her lip fillers at the time, her not disclosing her breast implants, because she was actively selling her image and she was actively selling herself, like she was the product. And it's just, it's so ironic that somebody who sold themselves as a product is now crying like, why don't people see me as human? She made herself into a product, and now the product is like, hey, I'm human, treat me like a human. It's like, well, you made yourself into a product. Like, this is not like you, I mean, I know you can argue her family dragged her into this, but she keeps whining and complaining. Like, at least with Kim, I hate defending Kim Kardashian, I really do, but at least with Kim, she's like, yeah, I wanted fame. I wanted fame, I wanted success. I mean, granted, when she talks about how hard she works and she talks about like what she does, and it's like, Kim, sitting in a makeup chair all day is not work, but she does it. You know what I mean? It's like she admits that this is what she wanted. She shows up and does the stuff like she's, you know, she wants fame and she shows up for fame. She wants, you know, to be the center of attention. She shows up as the center of attention. The fact that Kylie keeps saying she doesn't want fame and she doesn't want this life, but yet she's actively benefiting from it. And even though she has the money to walk away from it, she still continues to do it and profit off of it. So at a certain point, it's like, stop complaining about it. Because if you don't want it, you're an adult now. You can make the decision to walk away from it. Because at the end of the day, like, Kendall and Kylie don't add anything to the Hulu show at all. In fact, most of their storylines are literally just like add-ins that they felt like they needed to throw in just to have them on camera. The show doesn't need either one of them. So at a certain point, it's like, for me, it's the inauthenticity. It's the, I made my own bed and now I'm gonna cry about it. I'm gonna blame other people. And the fact that Kylie set this standard for this image, I know that these girls have never admitted to BBLs or anything when they've obviously had them. If you look at Kylie like at like 15 versus 16 or something like that, like if you look at her timeline, she did not all of a sudden, like, and you can tell too, like her waistline, because you can tell when she's wearing dresses where she's not corseted, her waist is clearly like she surgically snatched in her waist. That's not something that happens in nature, especially because Kylie's been pretty open about not working out. So like, this is not something she achieved through fitness or anything. And before you come for me and start telling me, oh, there are women that have like a naturally smaller waist and naturally larger hips and a butt. Yes, of course there are. Not that dramatic. Like, there are not women in the world that have a waist that small and hips and a butt that big and also have like legs that skinny. Like, that's not found in nature. It's not. Like, and I know there are going to be women that be like, no, I have that body type, or my sister has that body type. Probably not to those dimensions. Like, probably not to that freakish level of the dimensions naturally. You either had the work done or, look, I have a very exaggerated chest for the rest of my body. Like, compared to my hips, my upper body is excessively large, but I also have large shoulders. I have a large rib cage. My body proportions, while they are unusual proportions, there are parts of my body that are there that support the other parts of my body that might be on the larger side. If I had this size of a chest with tiny narrow little shoulders and like a tiny little rib cage, I wouldn't be able to stand upright. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard enough now with my body the way it is. Nature knows what it's supposed to do. Like, nature doesn't give women like a very large hips and a large butt and like skinny little chicken legs. They give them like bigger thighs and bigger legs to support the parts of their body that happen to be larger. I keep saying over and over and over again, women are like, people can look like that naturally. No, you can't. The fake never looks like the real thing. And I know I'm gonna rant about this, but like, this is really passionate. I go into this more in other videos. But again, I'm not saying necessarily that with Kylie, she's done this as a masculine shield. I don't know enough about her personality for this, but I also get really frustrated because she really did convince an entire generation of women to objectify themselves because she was their role model. I find this ironic that there's so many people that will be like, Kylie was just a young girl. She can't be held accountable for her actions. It's the public's responsibility to be like responsible for their own selves and their own decisions. It's not Kylie's responsibility because she was just a young girl. But she was influencing young girls. So like, if Kylie wasn't old enough to be held responsible for the actions that she was influencing young girls to take, then why are the young girls responsible for emulating her? Because aren't we talking about a whole bunch of young girls? Why would one young girl not be held accountable but other young girls should be held accountable? Are we gonna say that young girls shouldn't be making these kind of adult decisions? Yeah, I would say absolutely. Like, girls who are under 18 should not be making life-changing decisions like plastic surgery and things like that. However, you have to look at the source. Like, Kylie did influence an entire generation of girls and actually set a beauty standard for an entire generation of like Instagram models to all have massive surgeries to emulate that look. Like, she set the look. Granted, it wasn't her alone, but at the end of the day, she became the face of the look. So if she wants to start calling out other people and naming names of other people that influenced this, I think she should. Let her be a whistleblower. Let her call out other people, her family, other industry people. Like, let her do that. If she's not going to call out names, she made herself the face of this, she's going to have to take the brunt of it. I will also say too, and again, this is going to sound so insensitive, but I just feel so strongly about this. And I know, like, I feel like if we have to take down Kylie Jenner and Kylie Jenner has to feel bad about herself to save other women, then you know what? Let her be the casualty at this point. Like, I feel like she's earned enough money, she can go away and she can do her thing and she'll be fine. When Kylie said, "It's a wonder I'm still so confident and I can look in the mirror and say that I'm pretty," I literally almost like threw my phone like across the room. I was so angry because I'm like, all right, if you're confident and you think you're pretty, then what's the problem? Like, there's no problem. Like, if these comments are not affecting you, she's probably in denial about it. Either that or they're fake tears, because if it doesn't bother you, then stop crying about it. So again, I don't know if she was just lying about it or whatever, but like, that was like, okay, if you still are confident and you still think you're pretty, then okay. We need to stop associating fake beauty with words like pretty and beautiful. Every time someone's like, well, Kylie's a pretty girl, or like, Kylie's beautiful, we need to stop doing that. Like, it's fake. Like, we need to stop calling like women that have like, you know, surgically altered bodies as like perfect, because it implies that that's the standard, and the fake should never be the standard. As I mentioned in other videos, and it was the video that got really popular on TikTok, it's making the way for us to think that fake is normal, which literally opens the door for AI. And I'm not gonna dive into that here. I've talked about that in other videos, but like, it's such a dangerous road that we're going down. We need to stop associating that. And I'm not sitting here saying that we should say Kylie's ugly, or that we should say that, you know, people that have surgeries or anything are like ugly, or start shaming them. But we need to stop associating words like pretty, beautiful, perfection, things like that. We need to stop associating those words with things that are fake and the things that are fake beauty, because it sets the wrong message. Like, we need to be more conscious of the wording that we're using. I know that was like a whole other rant that didn't really have to do specifically with the masculine shield, but I really do think that it's celebrities like Kylie. And again, she's not the first. I mean, I think Kim did it, but I think Kim did it with an older audience that I think was a little bit more aware and conscious of what was going on. And Kylie, who was targeting such a young audience that was so easily manipulated. And I really do think that, I just think that Kylie was even more damaging than Kim. And I think Kylie was less transparent than Kim, although Kim hasn't been super transparent. But I just think that it comes across differently. And I'm not defending Kim by any means. My heart breaks for Khloe because I think that she took the brunt of everything in that family, and I don't think Khloe should have done the things that she did to her face and body, but I understand how she got there because she was really the one who was scrutinized. Like, she was the one who people have said such horrible things about her. People didn't start criticizing Kylie like publicly on a mass scale until she started essentially like basically mutilating her body. That's what it is. Like, when you get plastic surgery to change your look just to fit a beauty standard, you are literally mutilating your body. It is no different than these women that get into cutting. Like, you're literally trying to destroy your body. It's body mutilation, and we need to start calling it that. It's fake beauty, it's not real, and again, I'm not a fan of shame, but we need to start calling this out and stop associating this with the beauty standard if we're ever gonna change, because it's only gonna keep getting worse. This video is already long enough. I have some thoughts on body image when it comes to men and dating and stuff, and some things about that, so I'm gonna do a video about that. I also want to talk a little bit more about pretty privilege as it comes to men and things like that. So I have some videos on body image that are going to be coming up. If there's any other topics that you want me to touch on, I threw in this Kylie thing because it was a hot topic right now. I really wanted to touch on the masculine shield aspect of things when it comes to weight gain and then excessive plastic surgeries and stuff. I think that Kylie was really a catalyst for a lot more women to start using the objectifying themselves as a masculine shield thing. I'm not saying that's why Kylie did it. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know. But I definitely think that she gave permission to a whole group of girls and a whole generation of girls to do these things. If anybody wants to say that, oh, Kylie didn't really have that much to do with this stuff, look up the Kylie Jenner lip challenge, which actually put a lot of people in the hospital just with her look. Even without saying she had a BBL, it's clear that she did. Even without saying that she had one, it encouraged a whole generation of girls to do it, which the BBLs have the highest mortality rate of any other plastic surgery. So there are literally women out there who have died because they've tried to emulate Kylie Jenner. And here's the thing, there's a lot of people who have said in some of my other videos about this that, like, well, it's not someone's responsibility to not make other people feel bad about themselves. That's true in everyday life, right? So like, I have a very large chest. If I walk around and some woman who happens to be very flat-chested and is self-conscious about it sees me and feels bad about herself, it's not my responsibility, right? That's, you know, I'm living my life. I'm doing what I'm doing. Someone else just has an insecurity and they feel bad about themselves. Totally true. If I was presenting myself as a product, as the ideal, and trying to sell people that this was the image that you were supposed to have, and let me sell you a product that will get you these results, when at the end of the day, like, I can't sell you a product that will get you these results. Nature did this, right? Maybe another woman, surgery did it, but they're trying to sell you a push-up bra that gives you the same effect, when at the end of the day, it wasn't a push-up bra that did it, it was actually surgery. But they're not divulging that it was surgery, or that it was nature or genetics or whatever. They're presenting themselves as the product, and they're trying to sell themselves as a product, and like, this is the ideal, and women look to that and say, I need to emulate that because that's how I'm supposed to look. That's a totally different thing than somebody just living their life. And if someone sees someone and maybe they have like a nose that they wish they had, they're like, oh, I feel bad about my nose because I don't have her nose. That's just your own insecurity. But if somebody is presenting themselves as the beauty ideal and making themselves into a product that is trying to sell to the world that this is the beauty ideal, then yeah, they do have some responsibility in other people feeling bad about their look and their image. Because if you keep seeing the same image over and over and over again, you start to believe that that's how people are supposed to look. It happens with filters. I've said this before. I was never self-conscious about my nose. Like, I think I have a cute nose. Like, I don't have any issue with my nose. Never thought about having a nose job before in my life. But you put on like some of the filters and stuff, like they shrink my nose. And I'd be like, that's weird because I think I look weird with a shrunken nose. But like, at a certain point, you see enough of that, and I could see where, like, as a grown woman, like in her 40s, like I don't care that much about it. But like, I could see if those things were a thing when I was a teenager, starting to be like, maybe I should have a smaller nose, because you keep seeing that over and over and over again. you keep seeing these women with these like insane BBLs where they have this completely disproportionate waist to hip to butt to thigh ratio. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, those things in proportion just don't make sense. Again, I'm not saying that you can't have exaggerated features. I have some exaggerated features, but like, they tend to fit with the overall shape of your body. But like, people that have like the waist that is like dangerously small, but then somehow have these like gigantic hips and butt and then these skinny little thighs, and it's like, okay, this doesn't proportionally fit with other parts of the body. You start to see that over and over and over again. You start to think, well, that's what I'm supposed to look like. Like, that's what a woman is supposed to look like. And it starts to program your brain to think that you have to look like that. You see enough women with breast implants. I don't think most men today even know when a woman has breast implants, because I think they're so used to seeing implants that I think that they think that that's normal. Like, that's what normal boobs look like, when it's like, breast implants don't look like normal boobs. But we start normalizing that that's what it's supposed to look like. Again, I have other videos where I go into this, but like, the beauty standard is so screwed up. And I have some other videos I'm gonna make about this topic. Any other requests on this topic with body image, let me know. I really wanted to focus a little bit more on the masculine shield, but the Kylie thing had me on like a rant, so I had to go off. So yeah, if you have any thoughts, if you've experienced a masculine shield in any way, and this doesn't have to just be about body image and weight, like I said before, the masculine shield can show up just in like your body language and energetics or things like that, or certain activities, or, you know, it can show up in so many different ways. I just kind of wanted to focus on the weight gain because that's something that I've experienced a lot in my life. And I also think like the obsessive need to objectify yourself as a false sense of empowerment. I think those are two incredibly common ways that the masculine shield is showing up in women. I understand, like, it's understandable, because in reality, the world right now isn't really feeling very safe for many women. So it's understandable. It's just not a healthy way of expressing it. But I'm a big believer that awareness is the first step to healing. So if you have any thoughts on the topics in this video or any other video requests, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you, and I love your video suggestions. And honestly, like, any comments, likes, shares, subscribes, you know, anything like that really helps with my engagement. It helps more people find my videos and really get this message, because I really do think that these messages that I'm sharing are really important. Yeah, any engagement on this content really is helpful, and I appreciate all of you that do engage with my content. And, you know, if you haven't subscribed, I'd love for you to subscribe. Like, I really hope this channel can grow and more people can learn the lessons that I'm sharing with all of you. If you'd like to learn more about your dark feminine energy, which is incredibly healing, it's a great way for you to heal all of your feminine energy, great way for you to heal your masculine shield, because dark feminine energy is really great for feeling your sense of like feminine power. So you don't feel like you have to enact your masculine shield quite as much. You can actually step into your feminine power. I highly recommend you check out the Dark Feminine Energy Guided Journal. It's available on Amazon. Link is in the description box below, along with links to classes, master classes. You can also check out in the description box links to all my social media accounts. My TikTok has actually been blowing up lately, so if you want to check that out, or if you've come here from my TikTok, welcome. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.